Good evening, class. It's Mrs. Albright, and tonight we are working on Module 6, Lesson 6. So we're going to continue doing similar work to what we did today, where we are representing fractions and decimals using area models, our 10-bar grids and our hundreds grids. But we're also going to be doing that tonight with mixed numbers. So these are all numbers that are going to be greater than one whole. The first fraction that I want to look at is 1 and 22 hundredths. So what's different about this fraction than the ones we worked on in class is that this is greater than 1. So I start with one whole, and then I have 22 hundredths. So up here I have two area models. This one is broken into tenths. This one is broken into hundredths. So this one right here represents my one whole. So if I want to show that in my area model, this fraction where I have one whole, I would end up coloring in this whole thing. This is my one whole, which is represented right here, my one whole. Now I have 22 hundredths, and so I'm going to use this hundreds grid to represent that. So first of all, I can decompose this fraction. So 22 hundredths is 2 tenths plus 2 hundredths. I'm just taking that fraction and putting it in expanded form. And I can show that on my hundreds grid. I can either color in 22 boxes individually, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or I can just do my vertical rows because I know there's 10 in each of those and count by 10. So 10, 20, that's my 2 tenths, and then I need to color in 2 more. And now this picture represents my fraction 1 and 22 hundredths. So to write this in decimal form, I'm also going to think of this as my place value chart. So I've got my one whole, and then my decimal point, and then here in this image, I have 2 tenths and 2 hundredths. So the fraction 1 and 22 hundredths can be rewritten as a decimal as one whole and 22 hundredths. And if I want to do this with another fraction, I can take the fraction 1 and 38 hundredths, and I can look at it the same way. I can see I've got my whole number 1 here, which means I would need to color in this whole grid. One whole is equal to 10 tenths. So I'm going to color in all of those. And then this part of the fraction here, I'm going to decompose. So it's 3 tenths and 8 hundredths. I'm putting that in expanded form. So then on my hundreds grid over here, I'm going to color in my 3 tenths, which I know are these vertical rows. So that's 10, 20, 30. That's my 3 tenths or my 30 hundredths. And then I'm going to color in 8 additional ones. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8 to show my 38 hundredths. To write this in decimal form, I want to look at this grid as a place value chart. I could even kind of imagine a place value chart drawn up here where this is my ones, and I have 1, 1, and then the blue part is my tenths, and that pink part would be my hundredths. So here I have 1, and this is where my decimal point would be, 3 tenths and 8 hundredths. Okay, now if I go back to that original decimal that I had, 1 and 22 hundredths, I want to see where this would fall on a number line. So I'm going to draw a nice long number line from one edge to the other. I'm going to start with 0. I know this number is bigger than 1, but I know that it's less than 2. So looking at this number line, I know that this number is going to fall somewhere in this category. I don't need to decompose the section of my number line between 0 and 1 because I know I have my one whole. So I'm just going to go ahead and make that leap. There's my one whole. Now the part that I need to mark on this number line are my 22 hundredths. So I am going to go ahead and decompose this into tenths. And I'm going to see how many tenths I have in this decimal, and the answer is 2. I have 2 tenths. And on my number line, 2 tenths is right here. But since this is 22 hundredths, I have 2 tenths and 2 hundredths. So my spot on the number line, I'm not going to actually draw the tick marks to break this down into tenths to break this section down into hundredths and make 10 little spaces between 1 and 2 tenths and 1 and 3 tenths. I'm just going to place my dot on the number line just a tiny bit past that 1 and 2 tenths. And that point on the number line right there is where my 1 whole and 22 hundredths belongs. And that's because it has 2 tenths plus 2 hundredths. So it's just to the side of that one. Now that second decimal we had looked at, which was 1 and 38 hundredths, if we put that on a number line, it's going to be similar. I'm going to start with 0 and end with 2 and put my 1 whole right in the middle. And this number also starts with 1 whole, so I'm going to go ahead and make that hop on my number line. There's my 1 whole. And now I have 38 hundredths left that I need to mark up. So I'm going to break this number line into tenths. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 tenths, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 tenths. And I'm going to see where my 3 tenths is on the number line. So here's 1 tenth, 2 tenths. So this is 3 tenths right here. But with this decimal, I'm looking at 3 tenths plus 8 hundredths. So that's almost 40 hundredths or 4 tenths. So this one on my number line, I'm going to move it almost to the 4 tenths. I'm going to put it right about right there. That's where my 1 and 38 hundredths would be. Because I know that this point, where that next tick mark is, that point right there would be my 1 and 40 hundredths or 1 and 4 tenths. Those are equal. Now for you to try it. Here I have a fraction written in unit form, 4 ones and 18 hundredths. In your quiz questions, I want you to write this as a fraction and as a decimal. I have another unit form, 4 ones, 8 tenths. I want you to write this as a fraction and again as a decimal. When you are done with the quiz here in Edpuzzle, there is a very short matching activity that I would like you to do using a Google Drawing. You will find the link in Google Classroom where the link to this video was. So make sure you get that done and turned in Google Classroom. Thanks and have a great night.